Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to the Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again today. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. And you know, it's starting to get cold. Winter's coming. Tomorrow's the 21st of November. And, you know, it's time that we look to huddle, we look to get warm, we look to get secure in this world that's gone a little bit out of control. And we look for peace, safety. And how do we get that? What do we do? Who do we follow? And all very important answers that we need in order to secure our future. What's the future going to be like? So let's cover that tonight, and let's see what we can do. What is the philosophy? What is the outlook? What is the mode that we need to use to obtain that security? Tonight we're very lucky to have with us someone who actually is an expert in that field and has taken the time to be with us tonight. And Engineer Buddha, if you will, let's put his pictures up on the screen and introduce CEO Ed Haynes, a retired police officer and retired active duty U.S. Marine. There you see him. Founder of Haynes Security Services, a multi-million-dollar security company with over 250 employees. Mr. Haynes has been entrusted with the security of some of the most influential politicians, celebrities, and leaders of our times. He was honored as Minority Businessman of the Year by SCORE, a program of the SBA, and Veteran-Owned Businesses of the Year by the state of Florida. As an international humanitarian and philanthropist, he's pioneering the progress in literacy and our kids' future, our education, their ability to learn, the rehabilitation of offenders so that they have another chance, civil rights, which seem to be something that's disappearing from our world. And on top of all that, he has a very strong mission to bring economic prosperity in a real sense to all our inner cities all across the country. And Buddha, if you will, let's bring him up live on the screen and bid a warm welcome to Mr. Ed Haynes to a Time for Truth show. How you doing?
Fantastic. How are you, sir?
Well, I feel a lot safer with you around. You know, I relaxed, and I'm going to let you take over because, you know, I've seen what you've been doing. And, you know, in all honesty, all joking aside, I'm actually looking forward to our show. So I'm excited to have you on the show. How is Miami?
Oh, Miami's great. You know, it's It's Miami. It's the dream place that, especially this time of year when you look at up in your area, everything is cold, and here in Miami, cold here is like summertime where you are. So, we're doing all right.
I can imagine. We were talking before, and I was born in Cuba. So definitely when it got cold this morning, I walked out to my car. I go, I'm no longer in Havana. I guess I must be in the Northeast. So I know what you mean.
Absolutely.
I know what you mean, Ed.
Yes.
So you know what? But let's get right to the show with you, because there's a lot I want to cover with you. But first I want to ask something. When you were a young guy, what were your dreams all about?
Well, actually, I dreamed of trying to impact the world. I was actually fortunate enough to be raised by a gentleman. My parents died at a young age, and I actually was raised by a gentleman by the name of Alvin Taylor, who actually was history in the making himself. He was the first black secretary of Florida's largest state agency, which at the time was called HRS, Health and Rehabilitative Services. And through that exposure, coming from a small town, Palmetto, Florida, all the way to the governor's cabinet, I was able to see life on various levels. And it impacted me to let me know that there are things above the experience base of people who may just exist in smaller environments, who may have had limited exposure. However, the second part of that epiphany was, with greater exposure came greater awareness, came greater effectiveness, and came bigger dreams. So as a young man, I just looked at what could I do, such as what he was doing, to change the world. And I think that those basic postulates is what propelled me to the places where I am now.
Well, it's interesting how life seems to always have a plan, and somehow losing your parents, which is a horrible thing to have happen at a young age, but you meet this man who actually guides you and leads you to where you are today. And it makes a lot of sense because I've known you now, and so I know how you are. And we really got to thank him, because I believe in acknowledging people and for what he's done to bring you into the position that you are in life. So I was going to ask you, so then here you are with him now. So what happened, and how did you decide, I'm going to be a Marine, I'm going to defend my country? How did that happen?
Well, actually, I graduated high school in Tallahassee, Florida. And because he was somewhat of a strict disciplinarian, like most kids, you're trying to get away from that. So when I graduated high school, instead of I had two local colleges that I could have gone to in Tallahassee. I had Florida State University and I had Florida A&M University, as well as Tallahassee Community College, actually three. But I was trying to get away from home and get away from all of the strict guidance that you have as a kid growing up. So I decided to go to Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach, Florida. So I go to Bethune-Cookman, my second year at Bethune, just prior to going home on summer break, they had a career day at a college that was also there called Embry-Riddle University. And of course, being a college student, then we were going there to look at whatever opportunities existed. And when I go to Embry-Riddle, as a college student, you're accustomed to everybody clamoring over you and trying to sell you on their particular product or their particular college or their particular service. So when I get to Embry-Riddle, I noticed this table that had this guy standing over there with this very impressive uniform on. And I noticed all the girls were clamoring around this guy. And I said, oh man, I need one of those uniforms right there. So I said, hey man, my partners, I said, hey, let's go over here and mess with him, because, he's going to try to get us to sign up. We ain't signing up, but let's just go talk to him, right? So I go over to this table where this Marine in full dress blue uniform recruiting for OCS, which was Officer Candidate School. He actually sitting there, and I walk up to him and I wait on him to throw the pitch and start recruiting me, right? And then the guy just threw me a curveball, right? The guy looks me in the face and says to me, "Why should I let you in my Marine Corps?" And I'm totally blown away because I'm like, what do you mean? Why should you let me in the Marine? You don't know who I am? I'm Ed Haynes. So I spent the next hour explaining to this guy why I needed to be a Marine. I said, well, how did he turn this from him recruiting me to me recruiting myself, right?
Right.
And I went into the whole thing of explaining this to him and everything. And he says, well, just put your information there and maybe we'll give you a call later on, right? So I did that, but I walked away from that engagement totally blown, like, what just happened? And why couldn't I qualify to wear that uniform that he was wearing? And I was like a week away from going home for summer break. So I go home for summer break, but it still was in my mind, like, this Marine guy, what is this thing about? I had never thought about the military up until that moment. I get back to Tallahassee and I decide I got to find out some more about this Marine thing. So I go to the local recruiting office just to find out more information. And long story short, the next week I was on a bus to Parris Island, South Carolina as a Marine Corps reservist so I could go to boot camp over the summer before college started back up. And that's how I ended up going in the Marines. And then from that point, it just was a rocket ride. I came back as a reservist. I was a very well-known athlete back at home. So when I came back, they used me as a proof source for others to join. Then I had so many people joining the Marines because I was one, until when one of the Marines was going back to the fleet, instead of them recruiting a new guy to come in, they promoted me to corporal and made me a full-time recruiter. So then I became a recruiter for the Marines and really spent 6 years in that position as a recruiter, rookie of the month, one of the top recruiters in the Marine Corps 6th District for several years. And that's pretty much how it happened.
That's a beautiful story. I'm curious, did you ever get a chance to see that original recruiter and speak to him?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I met my wife at Florida A&M University when I went back to Tallahassee, and then I met her and decided to get married, and then she was from Miami, so we go to Miami for the wedding, and he was one of the Marines in my wedding. I had a full Marine Corps dress blue wedding, and he was one of the Marines in the wedding.
That's a beautiful
Gunnery
story.
Sergeant Witzel. Yes.
That's a great story, man. That's a beautiful story. You know what? So now you're a Marine. Now, so what happens now? How do you decide now from nothing you're going to start Haynes Security Services? How does that happen?
Well, then what happened was, as a result of being a Marine, of course, when you're hanging out with your friends at parties and stuff like that, since everybody knows that you're a Marine, somehow you end up always becoming security, because they figure that since you were in the military, then you got to know how to fight. So, you know, everybody's like, okay, Ed, you're going to be security and da 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 da. So you just kind of like, by de facto, by default, you're the security guy. So what ends up happening was I started being security for different friends of mine that were in the entertainment industry, had gotten connected with several high-profile celebrities through different situations that occurred that I found myself in, and people took a liking to me, and as a result of that, then I started to become security for them, and then from that particular situation, that evolved into the law enforcement realm, because years later, after doing the security thing, I ended up running into a gentleman doing a drug sting, and they saw me there, and the guy was like, "Wow, man, you're pretty good." I had just gotten out of the Marines, by the way, and he said, "You're pretty good. You know, I hadn't seen you out here before. What department are you with?" I said, "Oh, I'm not a cop. I'm just out here hanging out with my friends." And he said, "What?" So little did I know, in the middle of a drug sting, I was getting interviewed to become the first black police officer in a city called Miami Shores, Florida. That following week, I was in the police academy and became the first black officer in Miami Shores village history. Spent 3 years doing that. And the next thing you know, I decided I just wanted to go full blown. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And I decided I wanted to just go full blast with the security aspect of my life, and basically did that. That led me to eventually hooking up with Congresswoman Frederica Wilson because of my contacts in the entertainment industry. When she ran for Congress, I had some of my celebrity friends to assist with her fundraisers, and she told me that if she won, she wanted me to be her chief of security and driver. So that's how I ended up working in Congress, and she was very close to President Obama. So I ended up, because of that, every time that she had to be with President Obama, then I was there, and I ended up being with the president on 4 or 5 occasions. Personally, anytime he came to Miami, we got the personal invitation to meet him on the tarmac. I was always there. In DC, I would come up and we would go to the White House. So, you know, it gave me an opportunity to engage on various levels. And from a security perspective, I was doing this as an individual. And a very interesting story that happened was, one day I was setting up a military affairs board for the Congresswoman, and I went to a veterans meeting that was being held by a county commissioner. And I met a guy. I was sitting next to a guy who ended up being the president of a large security company in South Florida. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm with the Congresswoman." He said, "Okay, great. I'm John Williams with 50 State Security." I said, "Oh, great." He said, "Yeah, I'm here to hire veterans for my company. We have a contract with Dade County Transit, which is, the largest private security contract with a county agency transit in the country." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, listen, if you're ever interested in a minority subcontractor partner," I say, "my company is your job. We're here to serve you. Whatever you need, we're ready to do it." Now, at the time, the company only consisted of me. So, but I'm throwing it out there, right? So the guy says, he says, "Okay, that's great to know." He says, "Are you serious?" I said, "No, I'm dead serious. And here's my card. Let me know if you ever want to do something, and I'll get with my constituents, and we'll figure out if this is something that we can do." So basically, once he did that, the next day, I'm at the Congresswoman's office working, and I get this call from this guy. So the guy says, "Yes, this is John Williams. I'm trying to reach Ed Haynes." I said, "Yes, sir, this is Mr. Haynes." He said, "Oh, remember we met yesterday at the Veteran Affairs Board meeting?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, as I told you, that we're interested in subcontracting with some other subcontractors because we're not satisfied with the service we're getting from these others. And if you're serious, we'd like to really see if we can partner up." I said, "Wow." I said, "That's quite an honor." I said, "I tell you what, can you hold on 1 second?" I said, "Because I would need to run this by my board of advisors and the chairman of the board, right?" So I put the phone on the desk and I walked down the hallway to the restroom. And I went in the restroom and I looked in the mirror and I had a quick meeting with the board. And when I looked in the mirror, I said, "Do we want to move forward on this contract?" And of course, it was a unanimous decision, me and my reflection. And we went back to the phone, and I told him I had an emergency board meeting, and it was unanimous decision that we could move forward. And from there, we took a company. We had to throw some stuff together. We had to get some certifications in 30 days. We had to hire some people. And we took the company from the first year, $150,000 to right now, last year, I think we did 5.3 million. So, the board has been happy with the decision that we made.
I think they probably re-elected the chairman again, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was unanimous also.
That's a beautiful story of how to actually get things to go in this world, and decision and, security and self-confidence. I was going to ask you a question on all seriousness, because I know you like to joke and make little of all these accomplishments you've made, but your opinion is important to me. What is concerning you right now with what's going on with drugs, with the economy, with the social unrest in the country? What do you feel about what's going on with all this?
Well, the thing that concerns me the most is the trajectory that I see on the planet overall, the downward spiral of mankind as a whole. I think that, unfortunately, from the times that I was younger to now, I have been able to see the deterioration of society. And fortunately, because of some of the exposures that I've had through some of the organizations that you and I affiliate with, we've been able to isolate and identify some of the causes of this downward spiral. But the good news is, because of the resources available, we've been able to find a way to actually make a change where we are. It's not something where you can just go and try to take on the whole world at one time. You start where you are and build from there, and then move forward relationship by relationship, such as us meeting all the way on the other side of the planet and forming a relationship that led to this interview. So, I'm just happy that I've been put in a position to meet great people, to do continually great things with people who are also doing great things, and then combine our forces to do even greater things.
Absolutely. Ed, is one of the things I've seen, and I work really very similar to what you do, is I look at what needs to get done, like you did when you got that offer to have your security company, and and then you make it happen. I think one of the things you and I can both give our viewers as we're giving the show is that that's how you make things happen. Sometimes people are a little quiet, reticent, fearful, shy, and that's not going to get it done. And you're right. And a lot of times, if you have friends, the friends will help you out. It's always a group effort. I look at all the things I've accomplished, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people who have helped me, who empowered me. And when I meet someone like you, I feel the same thing. Now, I know that, because you're very modest and you don't really mention too much, but I want the viewers to get a little taste of what you're doing. Because I think in New York City, if not mistaken, Harlem, you established a business entrepreneur club, right?
Yes, it's called the Harlem Entrepreneurs Club. And basically, that club is being formulated and developed in order to increase economic empowerment in the Black community. As most people will know, the Harlem Renaissance was a very, very powerful stage in human development here in the United States. And a lot of major accomplishments occurred during that time. So it has a historical significance of the people in that area. And unfortunately, due to circumstances of different kind of thought processes and political concepts and educational viewpoints, things have changed drastically. And I just, have been called upon on several occasions to just come up and speak a couple of times. And just through soul searching, I just decided that it's something that I wanted to take responsibility for. So therefore, myself and a gentleman by the name of Juan Bogan pulled together and started to build on this based on a lot of the teachings that I got when I was initially brought into an organization called the World Literacy Crusade, founded by a gentleman that you know, Reverend Alfred Johnson. So Reverend Alfred played a very integral role in where I am today, because a lot of the teachings, a lot of the understanding, and a lot of the contacts, quite frankly, that I have originated from the work he and I did together on various parts of the planet, trying to make a difference in the lives of people of African descent.
And before we end off for this show, and we're going to have you back to go over the mystery on the next show next week on Monday night, what final comment would you like to leave our viewers for tonight's show, Mr. Haynes?
Well, you know, we've talked about a lot of gloom and doom and talking about how things are kind of bad out here today. And I want to end it with a story that we used to be told about in the Marine Corps, about this Marine Corps general whose name was Chesty Puller. And General Chesty Puller was a Marine Corps general who everyone knew hated bad news. If you brought him some bad news, you're going to have a really rough time. So there was a famous battle of the Marines at a place called the Chozon Reservoir. And at that battle, the Marines were surrounded in a valley. There was no way out. They were totally blocked in, and somebody had to go tell the general that they were trapped and there was no way out. And everyone knew whoever took that news to the general, there was 9 times out of 10, it wasn't going to be too good for him. So they had to pull straws, and unfortunately, this poor guy pulled the short straw, and he was the one that had to go tell the general that they were totally surrounded and there's no way out. So the guy goes to tell the general the bad news, and he kind of, as he told him, he kind of shrieked and like, "Oh my God, General, sir, I have some news I have to tell you. Unfortunately, I have some bad news." He said, "You know how I feel about bad news, right?" He said, "Sir, yes, sir, but we have to tell you the situation is dire that we're in." He said, "Well, what's the situation?" He said, "Well, sir, after all of the battles and all the stuff that we've done, we found ourselves totally surrounded with no way out." And then he waited for the general to respond. And the general looked at him and kind of snarled. And he said, "What did you say?" He said, "Sir, we're totally surrounded. There's no way out." The general started to smile. He says, "Wow, that's the best news I've heard all day." The guy's looking at him confused, like maybe he didn't understand what I said. "Sir, I said that we're totally surrounded and there's no way out." He said, "I thought that's what you said. That's the most exciting news I heard all day." He said, "Sir, I don't understand." He said, "Do you know what that means?" He says, "No, we're stuck." "No, that means anywhere we shoot, we're going to hit one of them." So with that being said, my friend, it doesn't matter how bad things are in the world right now. No matter where we shoot, we're going to hit one of them.
Well, you know what, Ed Haynes? Thank you for being on the show. For those of you watching, get ready for 360 next Monday night as we continue and let you in on the secret of how to solve your life, economic prosperity, and have a little happiness in your life. See you next time on A Time for Truth show.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet